Hey friends, welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast. Come join me, your host Nicole, for some hope-filled conversations about heartfelt entertainment that makes your heart swing. Hey Hearties, welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast. I'm your host Nicole, joined by my lovely co-host Theresa and our friend Morgan to talk about When Calls the Heart, season 10, episode 11, Long Time Running. It was written by Derek Thompson and directed by Peter DeLuise. Lucas is the talk of Hope Valley. Elizabeth and the whole town rally around him, but everyone still worries it won't be enough to stop the governor. What a jam-packed episode this was. And emotional.
It was very emotional. I think this was the first time in like a long time, maybe since season 7 almost, where I just left feeling like this like big gravitas afterwards, where I'm like, oh, like, do you remember Into the Woods? That episode? Yeah. It ends with this like very like grave scene of Lee about to, in the infirmary. Everyone's worried. There's no closure really. This one felt the same to me, where it was like this very heavy feeling of like, oh wow, I need to go process that until next week. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this show was jam-packed with all kinds of good things, and it was like it reminded me so much of how When Calls the Heart has always supposed to been. Because like we got to see so many characters, like we got so many storylines with so many other people outside of the triangle, outside of Nathan, Lucas, and Elizabeth, and even of course Rosemary and Lee. Like we were actually able to see other parts of the other characters and what's going on in their lives. But yeah, it was kind of the same way. I was like, wow, that's a lot to unpack. Not just with Lucas and Elizabeth and Nathan, but like with like Henry and like so many of the other characters. Okay, I'm blanking, but like there was so much going on, but it was so good. It didn't feel like a lot of it was too much. It didn't feel fast paced. Like you actually understood what was going on in the scenes, and you were able to take in a lot of information in between scenes about what was going on. But yeah, I mean, I was like, did that seriously just happen?
Yeah.
What in the world?
Yeah.
I almost felt like with this episode, like there were so many good individual scenes that really showcased the level of acting. And like I firmly believe that the level of acting has gone up this season. It's been really good. But I almost felt like there were possibly maybe some scenes that were cut almost. Like I felt like this episode could have been an hour. That's how much stuff was happening. Like there was a lot. And I almost felt like this episode could have been a full hour, and it would have,
it would have felt like really an hour. It could have been an hour, and it wouldn't have felt an hour.
Oh no, it would not have felt like an hour.
You definitely were left feeling like you wanted more, and it wasn't even just what happened at the end of the episode. It like I wanted more of Mike and May. I wanted more of Fiona and Faith and May and Hickam. I wanted more of like so many of the other characters and what was going on in their lives. I was like, ooh, I want more of that. Like I could literally just like watch them all day long and be totally fine. Like I was like, I mean, it really did. It was an episode that left you wanting more of everything.
Yeah.
And it definitely, I agree with Theresa. It definitely felt like they had gotten some scenes cut.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have heard that they actually did cut quite a bit from the last 2 episodes just because for time reasons. But I could feel it a little bit in this one because I was like, I just want more, I want even more. Like the scenes that we got were top tier, and I could tell that if they did have to cut scenes, they kept the best scenes in. But I could have used a little more like filler, if that makes any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, no, I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it was like emotional like scene after emotional scene, and it was like, I need a moment to process.
Yeah. Well,
so true.
We start on a happy note with Mike and May with their 2 scenes together.
I
love them.
I love them, but I never would have thought that whenever they introduced us to May for the first time, I never in a million years thought that they were going to put them together. Never.
No.
I was rooting for Hickam and Faith more than anything because like that was always something that was kind of like a little bit teased here and there.
Yeah.
Or at least I felt like they teased it, especially once Carson left.
Yeah.
But I never ever thought that they would put Mike and May, and it doesn't necessarily feel out of the blue at the same time. Like usually whenever they put two characters that you never thought would get together, it didn't feel like it was a lot like Florence and Ned. Like it was very much like how they were. Like it wasn't out of the blue, but at the same time, you never thought that they would put those two together.
Yeah.
I feel like
I almost feel like it's very interesting because I didn't think they would put them together like you said, but in the context of I originally thought they were going to put Nathan and Faith together, and so I was like, okay, Mike and May, that makes sense, but Nathan and Faith are not together right now, and they're not going to be together. But it was interesting to me that they still pursued the Mike and May thing because I actually like it. I like it a lot, and it's not what I was expecting, and I think it works because you know she's been through a lot in the little time that we've known her. She's been through a lot of trauma. She knows about a lot of things, and meanwhile you have Mike, who's very like sweet and innocent and very a little bit naive, but you know, like that in the best way. And I feel like you know it works. It works in that way.
Yes.
Did you guys feel like they've kind of changed May's character a little bit? Because I feel like whenever she first came on the scene, her personality definitely fit more for Nate in that time. But it's like they've kind of caused her to now become kind of meek and quiet and like slow to talk and quick to talk and butt into situations and everything, like how she was like in the beginning when we first saw her.
I definitely think she was a little more defensive in the initially in the beginning. Like a little bit more feisty. But one thing that I've learned from, you know, like I do a lot of psychology study and everything like that. But one thing I've learned about situations of like narcissism and abuse is once you get out of those situations, a lot of times it takes a lot of like deprogramming in your mind of, you know, not thinking of yourself as like, you know, the lesser person, which she did initially. You know, she felt like she couldn't sing. She felt like she couldn't talk about her grandmother's recipe for the face mask. She's very like not confident. And like you said, very meek, very like quiet. And I think that comes with getting out of that situation. You know, her defenses were up when she was in it, but once she got out of it, it's kind of this whole thing where, you know, she's left to deprogram herself from that way of thinking. And I think Hickam is the person to do it because he's very very non-threatening, very, you know, very innocent.
He's really the perfect guy for May to go to after having a kind of guy like Jeffrey, because he really is like from what we've seen of Jeffrey, he like him and Mike are definitely completely opposites in every single way possible. And like that's and that's gonna be what's gonna be so interesting about their relationship if we are able to get a lot of good scenes between them before they just automatically jump right into dating. Is them, or even while they're dating, is like him being like, hey, you don't have to apologize for being this way, or hey, you don't have to feel like you can't talk to me about these situations or things that you get excited about or things that you like or things you don't like. Like, I want to learn these things. I want to know these things. I want to, you know what I mean? I feel like I would love a scene like that.
Same.
Of him helping her to deprogram that part of her and being able to open up, be the person that she was before.
Yes. Yeah. And I think now that she feels comfortable with him, she can have these conversations where she actually takes the lead. And in this instance, it makes so much sense for, you know, Hickam to be asked out as opposed to ask someone out. That's just very Hickam. Like we've seen it before with Fiona. She'll ask him to dance. she'll be doing the male leading part of the dance, like in the dance, and it's very funny. And it's just like this reversal of roles, but it makes sense for Hickam, but it also makes sense for May in that, you know, she feels comfortable with him. He's encouraged her. He's helping her to deprogram that part of herself. And this is showing on her part a growth and a more confidence in herself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love in the first scene when he's hiding behind the book, and I'll mention the title, Night of the Lonesome Heart. He says it's one of his favorites. And then I love when May walks out with the book and Ned goes, I hope you know.
You're gonna have to pay for that.
You'll have to pay for that book.
Yeah.
I knew he was gonna say that. I knew that was gonna happen. I was like,
of course.
I was even kind of like silently hoping. I was like, please have Ned tell him to buy that. Like, please, that would be like the best comedic moment ever. I love whenever they give Ned like comedic moments like that.
Yeah,
because it just gives his personality.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Yes,
it's always super fun.
Yeah. And I have to point out before we move on, I thought it was very interesting in the second scene when they are talking about the book, or May is talking about the storyline of the book, and she says, and she decided to stay. That was total foreshadowing to the end of the episode.
For sure. Yeah,
total for sure. Like they talked about how she wrote a letter. Like, what do you think she wrote in the letter? Like, it kind of makes you, like, even, like, a lot of people were talking about, like, oh, is Elizabeth going to write a letter? Like, is she going to write Lucas a letter? Is she going to write Nathan a letter? Like, what is she, like, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yes. And then they decide to go on a date.
So cute.
Hopefully we'll see either this episode, well, probably not this episode, but next season.
Yeah, I definitely, like, and that's another thing is, like, I don't want their romance and their love story to be overshadowed. Like, I don't want them talking about things and us not getting to actually see it on screen. Like, I hate whenever they do things that are so progressive off screen. It's like, I want to see those things, you know, or at least have them talk in detail about what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I want Hicko to be like, yeah, I sat on this side of the table, she sat on that side of the table. She drank wine, I drank this, you know.
Yeah.
She ate this, we ate that. We talked about this, we talked about that. Like, I want him to give like a full description of what that date happened, or else I want to see it with my own eyes.
Yes. And I feel like Hickam and May, that's going to be something that we see even more of in season 11. Which is exciting, because I think what you could do there's a lot you could do. They could be kind of like the comedic couple, almost the way Lee and Rosemary were initially. Yes. They could be kind of that way, but in like a smaller side character kind of way. Yeah. And that would give Lee and Rosemary a little more leeway, I think, as less of just carrying the comedy of the show on their shoulders and kind of able to do more things like, you know, be parents or do the newspaper.
And seeing them as parents is one thing I desperately want more of in season 11, please.
Yes.
I know we really have not we've gotten some really cute scenes between them, but it's like, I kind of, like, I'm not gonna lie, especially since they had her give birth so early in the season, I was like, kind of thinking, oh, so they're trying to go ahead and rush the pregnancy, get her through the pregnancy, have her give birth, so that we were able to actually see them be parents this season.
Yes.
And we have, but it's and I get it, like, whenever you're working with a baby, it's really extremely difficult because you only have so much screen time with them, and then you're like playing with a doll wrapped up in a blanket. So I get that side of it, but it's like at the same time, like, I'm kind of feeling like the parent side is kind of lacking a little bit. We're not getting
just a little bit.
I don't have many problems with this season, but one thing I do have a problem with so far, at least a little bit, I would have changed this, is you gotta show them as parents after the baby is born, because right now the way it feels is that the baby is in the story. I know we got the big political storyline going on, but the baby feels like an afterthought. And at this point, them having a child, them wanting a child for years, it doesn't even feel like they should have, you know? Like, it almost feels like they're happier doing their life without being parents, you know, like not that they're unhappy, but almost like their life is going on completely the same way it went before they had the baby, except this time there's just a third person in the room that they talk to, which
another thing to add to the to-do list, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And I almost wish it had, instead of just being an additional cherry on top type thing, I almost wish it had reworked their entire like lifestyle almost to you know, change the way they live for the baby. And I almost wish they would do more of that in season 11. I think so. I don't know, that's just my take.
And then of course you have to take into consideration whenever we get to season 11, like, is it going to be kind of a big time jump, obviously, like we got with Little Jack? You know, like, are we going to get a time jump to where she's like walking around and crawling around and having like those kind of scenes with her? Like, are we going to skip a good bit of like the early parts of her, or what? I feel like we are, just because, like, not necessarily because of the storyline, but more from the fact that it's difficult working with a baby versus a toddler, and versus a kid at 5 years old, like Little Jack. So I feel like they probably are going to do a good time jump when season 11 comes. Just not only because of Goldie, but obviously everything going on. But I think a lot of it for Goldie, if I'm being honest.
And I do actually think that there's going to be more of a family dynamic with the Coulters moving into season 11, as opposed to like a business dynamic, because if they go the direction that we think they're going to go, I think that, you know, Elizabeth is probably going to be home a lot more often, is not going to be running around doing campaign things. And you know, you have a lot of blended family moments, but that might also mean that it's a similar situation with Lee and Rosemary, because I almost feel like Elizabeth's life in a way kind of reflects Rosemary's sometimes, where the two of them are very much caught up in the same like cycle. And I feel like if Elizabeth is more focused on her home life, then Rosemary and Lee will inevitably be focused more on their home life as well. So we shall see. I would love to see that, though. I think it would be super fun.
I would too. I would love some moments where, like, I would love just some, like, I feel like we need some more, just like some domesticated scenes where they're just at home cooking. Maybe like Rosemary and Elizabeth are like sitting together having a cup of tea, and like the kids are playing. Like, obviously I know there's a big age gap between Little Jack and Goldie, but there's a pretty, like, I have 2-year-old twins and a 5-year-old little boy. They're my nephew and my nieces, and I see the way that they play, and even though they have a good size age difference between the two of them, like they still play together. They still, you know, rough and tumble and everything like that. So I would love a scene like that where, like, you get to see Little Jack playing with Goldie. And all of that.
I think that would be super cute.
And can we please get more scenes with Henry and Goldie next season, please?
Yes! Oh my God! Oh, yes. Because we have Bill and Little Jack, and they have really cute scenes together. Now we're going to get Henry and Goldie. Oh, well, okay. Sorry. That's a spoiler.
I will say this. I've been missing a Bill and Little Jack. Like, I thought whenever we had him be the godfather, we were going to have him step up and be a godfather.
Yes.
We need more of that, too.
We need more scenes of Bill and Little Jack. Like, I'm telling, like, Lee might as well be his godfather instead of Bill.
Yeah. I mean, Lee and Rosemary are the guardians, which I don't really know what that means.
Basically, like, the gods pretty much just, the way I looked it up, because I was kind of curious, like, because at first I looked it up just to basically see, like, if there was a specific age as to when they would actually get christened, and most of them perform christenings on babies like back in that time, due to how many babies were dying almost immediately after they're born. they get christened. So that way they're baptized. So in case there's something happens and they die whenever they're babies, they're, based off of their knowledge, saved. And so I kind of looked down like, okay, what's the difference between a godfather and godmother versus a guardian? And so basically the godfather and the godmother's job is to pretty much just make sure that they are biblically sound. Like they're encouraging them with church and with God's word and like the biblical aspect of the child's life they're in charge of. Whereas the guardians, if something were to happen to the parents, they would take them. They would pretty much be, because like nowadays they don't do the guardian thing. Pretty much what the godmother and godfather do is exactly what the guardian was supposed to do, plus making sure they are saved.
Gotcha. Also, it does make sense for Elizabeth to have guardians because she's a single mother, whereas Lee and Rosemary, I don't know if they're gonna do that for Goldie's christening, but yeah, I do think it makes sense for Elizabeth because her husband died in the line of duty. She's constantly putting herself in danger. Not that was part of the equation, but
the other thing is like,
Amos Dixon.
I do kind of wonder though, like, who is going to be Goldie's guardians? Had they said that?
No,
so I'm kind of wondering, like, who's going to be her guardians then? Unless they cut out the guardians thing. I don't think that they would, because I would think that if they were going to choose guardians, they would choose a married couple like Elizabeth did. Because obviously Henry and Elizabeth aren't married.
Are there any other married couples apart from Floyo? Yeah, Floyo.
The Canfields.
Are there? Oh, okay. The Canfields. That makes total sense.
I can see that because like Joseph and Lee are so tight now.
Yeah, that's true.
I would. Okay, so
I actually would like to see that.
Yeah, I would like to see that too. I vote for the Canfields. Yes.
Yeah.
3 votes for the Canfields.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Oh my goodness. But going back to the first scene with Henry and Rosemary and Goldie, she has to get an article to the printer. So she asks Henry to watch Goldie, and I don't remember what he did. He made some kind of noise and it woke Goldie up. And he's like, oh no.
Like, oh no, here we go.
And then he starts singing to her. That was precious.
There's just something about Henry and kids that's adorable.
Yes.
Because we've seen it before. And it's just the cutest thing.
And the song, can we just mention the song?
Yes.
And the lyrics that were sang? The lyrics that were sung?
Remind me, because I actually didn't listen very well.
He sang the song Looking Glass. And there's the thing where we keep bringing it back.
Alice in Wonderland.
Looking through the glass. Like the looking glass.
Through the looking glass. If that looking glass goes
if that ring turns into brass. Daddy's going to buy you something else. Yeah.
Daddy's going to buy you a looking glass, I think.
Yeah, and it talks about how it's a ring turns into brass. And it happens before.
What?
Yes.
That's lyrics of the song?
Yeah.
What? It's like, if,
all right, you got to remember that what Carson said right before he left. He's like, oh, the brass ring that I could never catch. And gets on the stagecoach with the, oh my gosh, what? Why did I not pay attention to this?
Even more telling, because like, why would they change the lyrics? He says like, and if that ring turns into brass, Mama's going to buy you a looking glass.
Looking glass.
Wow.
And if
whoa, okay.
That is not the original way the song went.
And if that looking glass should break.
Yeah. And I think that's when it kind of cut off, or you couldn't really hear anything else he was saying. And we talked about how,
through the looking glass.
Through the looking glass, and it breaking, and the ring turning to brass.
Yeah, that to me is the biggest line in there, the ring turning to brass, because like I said, Carson straight up said that on his way out of Hope Valley. He's like, the brass ring that I could never catch, puts the engagement ring in his pocket and leaves. And it's like,
I do kind of wonder, like, what would happen? What would happen if Carson came back?
I actually wrote about that in my blog post.
Yes, you did.
Today, really? And I was like, I'd be curious for him to come back. I really would. It'd be very
I would love for him to come back because I love Paul Green, but it's like at the same time, like, would he like? Would it be too late for Faith and him to get back together?
I don't think so. I mean, look at Nathan and Elizabeth. It's not too late for them. So,
and I too
wouldn't it? You know what would be amazing if that scene where Nathan and Carson have that little banter going. What if that all came to fruition in the end? Like, can you imagine?
I love that so much.
Man.
Oh my god.
My head would just explode. My head would literally explode.
Why don't we just talk about this whole storyline with the governor and the election and Lucas and Elizabeth's future?
So I think it's interesting that I think it's a really good storyline for Lucas because he gets to be that charismatic, you know, like very, you know, just very big thinker, dreamer that we've heard about all season, but also that we knew was there back in season 6 even. Yeah, he's very charismatic, very much a, you know, showman, very much a leader. This is perfect for him. And I do want to point out that, you know, he's doing the whole thing. He's preparing to run for candidacy, and Elizabeth says if this is something you want to do, then you should do it. So all of this Lucas does want to do. It's not just because he has to. And, you know, of course, yes, he does have to. He needs to save the town, and he's the only one that can do it because he gave the speech. But he also wants to do it, which is very important distinction to make. He does want to do it. He made the decision to do it.
I think I feel like the people that feel like Lucas is being forced, or like, as a lot of people, especially the Team Lucas people who are, you know, they're grieving, they're going through a hard time right now because of everything that happens in this episode. But I notice a lot of them keep talking about how Lucas was pretty much forced to run for governor. He didn't really have much of a choice. He was the only one that people were, you know, talking about and wondering about and knew enough to be able to win this thing. Like, that actually had a chance versus a lot of people who, like anybody else, that they could have just dropped into the race to cover for Cunningham. And a lot of people like to hone in on that one line that he says about how it has to be somebody else, or, you know, just some of the lines that he said. And I think what people aren't taking into consideration is that I think Lucas was really scared to make this jump. I think he wanted to. I think he really deep down felt like this was something he needed to do and wanted to do. And it excited him. But at the same time, it caused him to have a lot of fear and a lot of worry about taking that big of a step towards this unknown territory, because he's never really, like, Lucas was a businessman. He created businesses. He ran businesses. He never ran a country or a town, or he was not in that big of a charge over a place and over people like he would be over being a governor or a mayor. And I think that scared him, especially because, like, he even talked about, like, a lot's going on. It's happening really fast. It's coming out of nowhere. It feels like, you know, he didn't really have a lot of time to catch his breath and be like, you know what? This is exactly what I want to do. This is what I want to do. This is exactly what I feel like I need to do. And it really does just fit so perfectly to Lucas and his character and and his mindsets and how he thinks, how he presents himself to the world, how he behaves, how he handles situations. Like, we saw the way that he handled the oil rig stuff. We saw how he handled the stuff between Henry and
Jerome.
The guy that we saw how he handled those situations. And we could just really, like, going back and, like, I even am really excited to go back and rewatch some of these seasons with him and how he handled these situations, especially knowing where he's going to end up now, possibly end up now. it's really fitting for his character.
I think so too.
Sure.
And even Elizabeth was afraid, and we hear that in her journal entry, which definitely needs to be pointed out, because this was another great journal entry from her, where we really are starting to see even more what's on her heart. And she says, "So much has changed in just one day. The day Lucas stood up and exposed Governor Balfour's corruption. I'm so proud of him. When we all realized he was the only one to save the town, he rose to the occasion in a way I could not have imagined. The moment he finished that speech, people started talking. And when Rosemary's article got picked up by the big city papers, well, nothing could have prepared me. I can't help feeling confused and afraid of change, of losing things I care about. With everything happening, it's been hard to think about us, and I'm starting to wonder about our plans. I need to share that with Lucas and ask him what his heart is telling him about his future. I wish I knew what my heart was telling me."
Yeah.
That is like a perfect journal entry. Perfect.
Yeah.
For this whole episode.
It is. And I think it really shows that, like, Elizabeth does care about Lucas, and this isn't just about her right now. This is very much like she sees that he has this opportunity. He's good at it. He should go for it. But it would also entail a lot of loss for her.
Yes.
And I think because she's already initially having doubts, I think she's starting to wonder, maybe this isn't something, it's not the loss of everything she cares about in the town, but maybe the loss of something else that, she's going to lose something with this decision. And I think she knows that at this point, deciding which thing is she, willing to give up in this situation. Yeah. And, of course, there's her heart involved in it, but there's also his heart, and she's taken that into account. It's also important to note that at this point, she is not sure what her heart is telling her, and she's still very confused. That's something very important to point out too.
Yes.
Yeah, because it does hint towards a later conversation that we obviously are going to get to later. But one thing about that journal entry is, like, she talks about how she needs to talk to Lucas, but obviously later in the episode they don't have a conversation. I feel like that's one of the turning points for me, is that they're not having a lot of conversations. And it's like, that was for me the beginning of them, like, starting to question their paths, like where they're going. I think that was another thing that was kind of like conflicting for Lucas as well. It's because he wasn't really being like, because it's like as soon as he gave that speech, his mind has not been on Elizabeth and the wedding and everything. It's been about this. It's been about the water. It's been about the governor and, like, Malfoy. It's been about Montague and, like, all these other things. Same for her. Her mind and her heart is only just wanting to focus on that.
Yeah.
Not so much her heart, but I mean her mind is wanting to hone in on just those things. Yeah. And it's like whenever they do start having quiet moments, like for instance her doing her journal, she's able to kind of sit with her feelings and put her feelings on paper. It's like you could tell, like, she's starting to, like, it's starting to unravel. Like, that's when she starts mentioning how she needs to talk to Lucas and see what's going on with him, and, like, how what his heart is telling him.
Yeah, they get.
Like, she's like, if I'm feeling this way, how is he feeling?
Yeah, they get interrupted in the next scene at the Queen of Hearts after the cake tasting. And may I just say, the fact Lucas thought they were tasting steak.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know about y'all, but I thought maybe it was because, like, I thought it was a miscommunication between Mike and Gustav.
Yeah.
Not the couple and Gustav or whatever. I think, like, because, like, Mike keeps bringing up the fact that he's talking in French and it's very aggressive and he's very angry and he's always sounding angry because he's talking in French. And Mike obviously is not the kind of guy that handles being yelled at very easily and very well. So, like, I could definitely see it being a miscommunication between Mike and Gustav. And I could see, like, Gustav's like, not cake, you idiot. It's steak. It's supposed to be steak. What are you talking about? It's not cake, or, you know. Yeah.
And we have not seen Gustav all season.
I know. No. I'm so mad about that. I need Gustav. He's like one of my favorite side characters.
Yes. He's almost like the new Mike. Like coming
a little more sassy than Mike, and a little less naive.
Yeah, for sure.
And let's talk about sassy with Bill Avery playing golf.
Yeah. I think it's so funny how like Jack Wagner was able to get the golf in there because he does the yearly tournament that he does with golf. Yeah. I was like, oh yeah, he's getting the golf in there, of course.
Yeah. And of course we know.
I love that they take what the actors would love to implement into the show seriously. Like, because we talked about, like, Kevin talked about wanting to have Nathan have that horrible mustache.
Yes.
And he got it. And so now I guess Jack was like, can we have Bill like golfing? Like, did they have golf in the 1920s? Like, can we have him golf?
Did you hear Kevin's answer to Tiffany's question on the after show? That was hilarious.
No. I haven't even gotten to watch the after show yet.
I think she asked him if he played golf, and I don't remember word for word what his answer was, but he was like, no, I'm horrible.
Oh my gosh.
You never know what's going to come out of Kevin's mouth.
You never know. I love Kevin because he's just so funny.
He's so real.
Yeah.
Like, he's just so real.
He's a real one.
Yeah.
Yes. The scene with Lucas at the Queen of Hearts when he walks in and he's like, hey, don't I know you? Aren't you the guy from the papers? Yeah. And you're, oh yeah, the other guy on the front page of the paper.
Yeah. I have to say, like, I've never wanted them to be friends, like besties, but I actually do really like it. And I've always said that I would really like their friendship if it wasn't as competitive or awkward or whatever. This is what that would look like. And it's great. I love it. And you could tell this is genuinely like it was almost more Chris and Kevin than it was Nathan and Lucas. Yeah, but I'm okay with that because you could tell that they just genuinely like being in scenes together. And it was really fun. I think I would like to see more of it. I think that would be a fun relationship. Both guys are similar in age. You know, they're both fighting for the greater good. They have some things in common, even if they are very different. I think it would be an interesting friendship. And I would like to see more of like a Jack and Lee dynamic versus a Bill and Henry dynamic, if that makes any sense. With the two of them.
Yeah. Yes. No, I totally agree. That scene was exactly the kind of scene that I always longed for them to have.
Same,
like that was so simple but very playful and something that you can clearly see like the guys, like the actors themselves and their humor, because that's exactly the kind of thing that Chris and Kevin would have going on outside of the TV show. And so like, and me and Carrie talked about this a lot on our podcast, and we were talking about how there's so many good possibilities with this friendship. Like, we also agreed that we didn't want them necessarily being buddy and like, you know, anything like that. We wanted it to be like you said, Theresa, like more of like Lee and Jack.
Yeah.
Like, and how they were able to be good friends with one another, but they weren't just like best friends.
Yeah.
Like constantly hanging out, constantly together, like it is for Nathan and Bill.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, how it's starting to look like for Lucas and Mike. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I kind of wish we hadn't seen that scene before the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they spoil a lot of scenes before.
They really do.
Yeah, I feel like we watched at least half of the episode by the time. Yeah. Although, actually, I was surprised by a lot of the scenes, but I did feel like the first half of the episode was purely already shown to us, and I was like, okay.
It kind of makes the episode feel like it's going feel longer, because like you already know what the scene's gonna do, so you're kind of sitting there waiting for the next scene. That's
not like, okay, let's go.
I've already seen this. You literally put this out there. Like, can we move on?
Like the first half of the episode, we had seen all but like 2 or 3 scenes.
Yeah. I do like that they put it out there, and they put it out there with with the comparison of like how it looked whenever they were shooting it versus like after they had done all the
that was
production stuff. That was cool.
Yeah.
Plus, I'm like a behind the scenes junkie. I love that.
Me too.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to that scene. Like, I also love when Lucas like very casually brings up the fact that they're raising money for him, and like brings the jar out, and like of course Nathan's like brings a little bit of money, and then he kind of just like looks at the jar and then looks at Nathan, and Nathan's like,
okay, I'll get more.
Like,
I
love how they're able to just like, and they can only those two would be able to do that to one another, and it'd be just so funny. The way that it is. Yes. Because it reminded me so much of this scene between them in the woods where Nathan's like he decides to stay with Lucas, and he's like talks about like wanting a cup of coffee, and he's like, I don't drink it.
Oh yeah.
And then Nathan's like, tea then. He's like, okay, I'll get the pot ready. And like just that dynamic between them is so good. I love it so much.
Yes.
For me, it's just as long as it's not like this awkward, weird, competitive thing, and it's just like funny, and like you can see that they genuinely do care about each other. It's nice, and I liked this scene because it actually felt like that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
So it didn't feel forced. Nice. It didn't feel fake. It didn't feel like the writers were just trying to come up with ways to put these two together, so that way there wasn't, in order to try and get the fandom to chill. Because I'm sorry, I don't see Nathan and Lucas having a friendship causing anything to settle down with the.
Oh no, no, it does not matter.
Worse.
Yeah,
it's probably gonna make it worse. But no, I love the scene so much because I really do love both of these characters, and I love whenever they're around each other. And I just hope we get more scenes like this. Like, I hope this is not the end of it, especially like I'm hoping that like I would love for Lucas to win governor, or if he doesn't, maybe coming back and him being mayor. But either way, I want him to stay in this realm because like obviously with Nathan being the Mountie, like the mayor or the governor is going to have the Mountie around, you know, with anything he's going to be doing. So I would love for
which would force them to work together, which I feel like them working together is their best dynamic. There are certain dynamics in the show where it's like, you know, Joseph and Lee are best when they're talking about spiritual things, or you know, like I don't know, Hickam and Lucas are best when they're doing comedic bits together because that's funny. I feel like with Lucas and Nathan, they're at their best when they're working together towards a common good, which I think would be great if he was mayor or if he was governor and found some way to, you know, be in Hope Valley. I think they could really, you know, build that friendship or even just relationship of working together in a really healthy way.
Yes.
I will say this, like talking about dynamics and stuff, like don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Team Gravy. You know, I love that. I love their dynamic. Him and Bill are really great together. I'm not gonna lie though, and I guess this is because I know how things were with Jack and Bill, but like I kind of want some solo stuff of Nathan as Mountie. Like it seems like Bill is always being the one to come in and rescue Nathan. Like especially with this last thing, it made it seem like had Bill not shown up, it would have all like everything would have been a different outcome. And I feel like that kind of does not do justice for Nathan, because Nathan is very intelligent. You saw how he, like, we know just with that situation, Jack would not have been doing any of that. He would have automatically pulled his gun out on those other two Pinkertons, told them to sit still and be quiet and shut up, tied them to the tree, like was ready to like kick his foot through that door and just like get ready to like, you know, cause some havoc.
Or pulled some kind of bluff with the red tablecloths. That was brilliant. I have to say that was brilliant.
But the way that Nathan handled it was so Nathan. Like Nathan, you can tell that Nathan isn't one of the ones that's like Jack, that is like coming in there, guns blazing, kicking, punching, like riding up on his horse and kicking someone in the face with the butt of his gun. Like, I mean, it's like that's not.
It's just two different styles that both kind of work, but with Nathan, it's always like he's trying to de-escalate. Like we saw this in season 7, de-escalating the situation with the lady Jenny and the gun.
Yes.
Just de-escalating these situations. Whereas Jack, I like to coin it his one punch knockout, where he punches somebody once and they're already just like out. He's done that so many times and it cracks me up. But
season 2 finale, I think, with the guy that was carrying around the like fake money,
the counterfeiter.
Yeah,
Jack is like, oh, what you doing? And the counterfeiter's like, immediate fist fight. Yeah.
I mean, like, and it just kind of goes back to another point of like how different Nathan and Jack are.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I get it. They're both Mounties. They both put themselves in danger. But that's the thing. Another note of differentiating Jack and Nathan is like, I think one of the reasons why Jack was so much more of a, punch now, ask questions later guy versus how Nathan is like always trying to de-escalate the situation is, I guess, because of Jack. Jack always, I think in Jack's mind, he was always going to die like guns, like with a purpose. Like it was going to be because he was a Mountie. He was going to get himself into a situation as a Mountie, and he was going to die as a Mountie.
Also, like Jack doesn't have a kid that was
exactly
that he has to provide for.
Exactly. Like he was, even with Elizabeth, and that just kind of goes back to like Jack always put being a Mountie over Elizabeth, and we all know, like, if this is going the way that we think it's going, Nathan is not going to do that. We knew that from season 8, episode 2. He literally tells her, "I will give up the Mounties. Like, I will give that up. Like, I'll give it up. Like, it's not worth more than you."
Yeah. See, because it's very different between Jack and Nathan, because in that specific moment, Elizabeth has expressed the same fear to Jack, and Jack's response was, "I'm not afraid to face my fears. I'm a good Mountie. I'm not going to get killed," or whatever, which it did happen. But, with Nathan, his reaction wasn't to say that. He did say, "Oh, I'm not going to let that happen." But then he also said, "I would quit. I would quit the Mounties."
Yeah.
And
because she even brings up, she's like, "You can't promise me that," because Jack had already promised her that. And I think even obviously in that moment, Elizabeth knew he couldn't promise that, but it was like totally different. But with like her, she knows the full effect of that.
Yeah.
Yes, she knows he can't promise that. So he took it further and said, I would give up the Mounties.
It's not going to happen because it's not going to happen because of me being a Mountie. If it happens, it's not going to be because I'm a Mountie. It's going to happen because it just was meant to happen.
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
I've said this before, and I'm sure y'all probably remember. Jack, he was a good man, good Mountie, and I do think he deeply loved and cared for Elizabeth. But you're right, he did put being a Mountie first
before her. Yeah, he did. And I've even said this, like, don't give me. Me and Carrie both say on the podcast, like,
I love Jack to death. Yeah. I think I love Jack. You know what? I will say this in defense of Jack. Not that you guys are attacking Jack right now.
No,
but I will say this. I do think that Jack was ready to settle down until his friend Doug died, and then the guilt element came into it. And from the guilt came his need to go and serve, and then from that need to serve came the PTSD that basically would never give him peace. Basically, once he went to the Northern Territories, it was over. There was no way Jack was going to be happy in domesticated life. There was just no way. It's kind of like Captain America in Marvel, where even this is a little bit of a rabbit hole, but if you've watched Age of Ultron, there's a scene with Captain Rogers and Peggy Carter. they're dancing and it's the end of the war, but you can see that he's not happy about it because he's very much troubled because his entire existence is basically as a war hero, and his purpose is to, be a soldier. And for Jack, I think once the guilt kicked in, he just felt this need to be that, and I don't think he would have ever been completely satisfied if he and Elizabeth had been married long term. So it was going to happen at some point or other. And I will say that I don't think he was always like that. But I mean, he was in the beginning, he didn't want to get married. Mounties, if you had wanted a wife, they would have assigned you one type thing. But I think if he became more open to the idea of settling down and having a homestead and starting a family until his friend Doug died. That was the changing moment, I would say.
Yeah,
and you can definitely tell that it was Elizabeth who changed him. Yes. Like prior to Elizabeth, like even like look at how it was with Rosemary. Like he dated Rosemary. Yes. I had to remind myself all the time that him and Rosemary were together. Like I had to remind myself because I'm like, I could never imagine those two together.
No,
oil and water. Oil and water, as Charlotte said.
Oh my gosh! And the fact that they were literally engaged.
Oh my gosh!
Can you guys? I could not imagine how that relationship was prior to that.
I mean, they had literally a great
friendship, but like everyone knows, like a friendship versus a relationship are two different things. Like they had a great friendship, but it was not a relationship. But like that even kind of goes back into it. It's like, up until he met Elizabeth, that's his life. He was gonna be exactly like his father. He was gonna live out his life being a Mountie. He was gonna love. He was gonna serve. He was gonna give his all to being a Mountie, and he was going to die a Mountie. He was going to die in a blaze of glory, pretty much. Like, yeah. I mean,
which maybe that's why he was attracted to Rosemary, because she's very much like the romantic, the just very like zest for life, but also like adventure. And I'm sure that's what he was attracted to because that's him. He's very much attracted to that life of not only adventure, but also like a greater purpose. And, you see some similarities even in Lucas where, he's very much into that adventure thing. And I really do think that him giving that speech kind of is equivalent to Doug dying in Jack's case, where it opened this door that's never going to be shut ever again. And it would have made him discontent in his life with just like Doug dying and Jack going to the Northern Territories would have made Jack discontent for the rest of his life.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
That's an amazing comparison. That's so true.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think that it's just an important thing to acknowledge that Lucas would have been discontent at this point because that door opened for him. And once that door opened, it's not going to close. Just like with Jack, it didn't close and it never did until he died.
Yeah, and I feel like that's just a huge compliment to Lindsay because she talked about in one of her last interviews, she talked about how she went back and she watched like all the seasons, everything prior to season 10, she watched it. And like that probably was part of like her mindset. You never know, like as many mirrored parallels that she's done to back into like previous seasons and tying them to the storyline now was amazing.
Yeah,
and like you could just tell like. Because like she even bring it all goes back to what Aunt Agatha was saying in the 100th episode. Like she talked about, like, are you sure he's going to be happy living in this small town life? Are you sure this is what he really wants, or is he basically asking like, are you sure this is what actually he wants, or if he's doing this because he wants you?
Yes,
and he's going to do whatever he wants. He has to do to keep you and keep you happy. Even at their own sacrifice of his own happiness and his own desires. Yeah, I feel like that's what she was underlyingly asking her and trying to get her to think about.
We may have thought that Aunt Agatha was a little bit, like pushy towards the Hamilton thing, but from the past, we know Aunt Agatha is never wrong about these things. She's never wrong. Even this season, she's not wrong.
Nope.
And
That is why she's my favorite Thatcher.
Yes.
Except for Julie. Excluding Julie,
Julie's great,
I love
too.
Julie. Yeah.
Julie's amazing.
The two of them are fantastic. But also, one thing I wanted to add to what I was saying earlier about the doors being open and, you know, it not being able to be shut. Elizabeth is that door for Nathan. She opened a door for him. He has never really opened his heart to romance, never really opened his heart to the idea of settling down, has kind of just been going door to door. But, you know, him professing his love for her, him thinking about buying land, him thinking about settling down, she is that door for him. She's the door for him. And, you know, that is why he would be content to just be with her, because that his whole life has been on hold for 2 seasons now because of that. Because right now he's feeling the discontent that Lucas or Jack would have felt if they hadn't followed through with their calling. He's feeling that discontent now because he hasn't been able to explore that door yet. And I think once that opportunity opens for him, it's going to fulfill him the same way Jack and Lucas were fulfilled in their calling.
Yeah. And I think that's also going to play into how the relationship is. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want Nathan's storyline to just be all about Elizabeth. But I feel like a lot of the scenes we're going to get with Nathan is going to be about the whole dynamic of being a blended family, about being like finally getting this thing that he has always wanted and desired pretty much since he met her. She walked through the door of the mounting station, like that's been it for him. And so like I don't want them to just pretty much chalk his whole entire storyline as just being about Elizabeth and Allie and Lil Jack. Like I obviously still want like a lot of Mountie stuff, like good Mountie stuff, or having him have other scenes with other people. Like I would love for there to be like almost like a scene where it's like him and Lee and Rosemary and Elizabeth, and like there's scenes with him obviously with Bill, scenes with him and Lucas. Like I don't want it to just be Elizabeth, but I do feel like a lot of his scenes, a lot of his most memorable scenes, most important scenes are going to be with Elizabeth.
I mean, think of it this way. I have really, this is my personal opinion, I have really enjoyed Nathan's whole like arc this season, and I've enjoyed every arc of his episode. His scenes are predominantly with Elizabeth most of the time, and it's not boring. And I think the thing that we know about Nathan and Elizabeth already that is going to automatically give them an advantage over maybe some other Elizabeth and her love interest storylines is that she and Nathan know how to fight and make up. They know how to, you know, work together on certain things. They know how to communicate, but also the idea of seeing Nathan content in this life that he's been longing for forever, and actually seeing him happy, because even though Lucas and Elizabeth were happy, he wasn't completely content. And Jack wasn't completely content when they were about to get married. He wasn't completely content. His mind was still in the Northern Territories, very much so. And he was never completely content. The difference between those two relationships and the future relationship he's going to have with Elizabeth is that they are going to fulfill each other in ways that the other two may not have been able to. And I feel like even if his storyline is predominantly him and Elizabeth, it's going to be a lot more nuanced than just him being the arm candy or whatever. They're gonna have issues, they're gonna have fights, but the thing is they've had that before and it's never torn them apart before. And the thing is it's going to be interesting because it's them, and they are actually, you know, they've been interesting all 4 years or 5 years now that they've been together, like doing scenes together and stuff, and it's been interesting all 4 years. I don't see it suddenly not being interesting when they're together. In fact, I see it as being more interesting because I think, like I said, there's a lot, their relationship is very complicated, very complex, very nuanced, and has a lot of layers. And I think that alone is going to give them a little bit more of an advantage in that they are both very much individuals already. And I think that's going to really help them to distinguish between, oh, this is Elizabeth and her love interest versus this is Elizabeth and this is Nathan. And they're together, you know.
Yes. I feel like Nathan and Elizabeth, I'm going to call it right now. I think there's going to be a proposal next season.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think it's going to go fast because you have to.
It is. Yeah.
This has been a long time coming.
Yeah. You know what? I might be the reason why I'm so like gung-ho about them and everything. I think I've been watching a lot of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and in that series, the main couple reminds me a lot of Nathan and Elizabeth. There's a lot of push-pull, there's a lot of intensity, but also a lot of support and communication. And they get married at one point in the series, but it doesn't end there. Their relationship goes past the marriage, but it's never boring. It is never boring. All 6 seasons that they are together, it is never boring because there are a lot of obstacles that they need to overcome. And Elizabeth and Nathan have been overcoming obstacles since day one, or even before they knew each other. They've been overcoming obstacles since forever, and I don't think that's going to change. No. I think they will always have a lot of things to overcome, but that's what makes them a dynamic couple.
Take into consideration Lee and Rosemary. They've been married since season 3.
Yeah, exactly.
And their storylines have never really gone stale to me.
No.
So, they have the capability of stretching this out. If they just get it right, if they get a game plan right now, like right now, there better be a game plan, like a serious.
Oh, they were already creating a game plan as they were writing season 10, which is exciting to me because that means that they're not just starting over and saying, okay,
Oh, and God, I'm telling you. Oh.
I would even venture to say that there could be a wedding next season. I don't think that they're going to wait long.
I mean, I know Nathan and Elizabeth would probably not want to wait long, but
I agree with the engagement, but I feel like a wedding is a little bit of a stretch.
Well, the only reason I said that is because of how fast or how quickly Lee and Rosemary got engaged and then married, because they got engaged in season 3, episode 7, and then they ended up being married by episode 9. So that's the only reason I said that.
No, you're right in that. I mean, they very could well be doing that. Yeah. You honestly never know. You never know with this show. That's what's so exciting about it, because you could live let's just go ahead and get into it. Nobody saw Elizabeth and Lucas breaking up in this episode.
No.
Nobody.
I mean, I thought it was going to happen next week, but this week, no.
But to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off, the fact that they break up in this episode was flooring to everybody. Team Lucas, Team Nathan, even Team Elizabeth people, or people who are literally just watching the show and aren't even on teams or doing anything on social media. Like, I actually have like a few elderly people in my nursing home who watched the show, and they were all floored as well. I was just like, oh my gosh. Like, that's insane.
But going to Elizabeth and Rosemary, talking about wedding planning, I just have to mention this because of Rosemary's line. Or we could just seat the children on top of the table to save room.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, this sounds great. And Rosemary's like, you have not heard anything I've just said to you. Like, completely just like, how dare you not listen to me? I know anything in your life.
See, we've seen Rosemary do this before with Lee, where she'll be talking to him, he'll be reading the paper, and then she'll say something completely bonkers, and he'll be like, oh, yeah, that's great, Rosemary. And then she's like, you didn't hear what I was saying. Yeah.
And they get interrupted by a phone call for Rosemary, and Cunningham has apparently dropped out. supposedly to health concerns. That's kind of sus right there.
Oh, so sus.
Blackmail. Blackmail.
And that's why a lot of people also think that if Lucas does not win, that there's going to be an uproar and that there could be other possibilities of things. And even some people have even said that, like, that's another reason why people thought, like, maybe he'll, like, all of a sudden run and, like, Lucas can drop out. And then that way other people who have, like, were voting for Lucas would vote for Cunningham. Like, there's all these theories about how this is going to happen because, like, obviously we don't want Lucas to like, move. We don't want him to leave Hope Valley. Part of us does not want him to become governor. But, yeah, I mean, the scenes between Rosemary and Elizabeth this season have been so good. The way that they've been there for each other and the way they've been helping each other and the advice that they have been giving each other has been so amazing. Especially, of course, Elizabeth, like, because, I mean, when you think about it, the fact that Rosemary got married before Elizabeth, but Elizabeth had a baby before Rosemary, and now, like, you know, all this kind of stuff, they're able to help each other in areas of their life that normally wouldn't happen based off of what happened, like, you know, because of the fact that Rosemary got married before Elizabeth. You would think that Rosemary would have a baby before Elizabeth, but obviously it didn't happen like that.
No.
But I love that it happened like that because Elizabeth was able to be there for Rosemary and really give her advice just from her own life.
Yeah.
Yes. And her own relationship with her own child and going through motherhood and everything like that.
Yeah. And going back to Rosemary, the scene with Lee in the office with the leaky roof and then them hanging up the phone at the same exact time.
That was a great scene.
Would you want to bet that was like one take? Them doing the telephones like that? Because, like, Kevin and Pascal are so, like,
I don't know if that was one take, but I think I do remember hearing Kevin say on the after show that the hanging up the phone at the same time was Peter's idea. And he likes to do a lot of that kind of stuff where they're in sync.
I remember Kevin specifically talking about before the season aired, he's talking about a scene that he read it in the script and was like, oh, this is going to be a hard scene. This is going to be terrible. And I'm pretty sure it was this scene. And he was like, yeah, I thought it was going to be really tough, but then it turned out really good. I'm pretty sure this was a
great scene.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Also, another great scene and question, Bill in his office with Nathan and Robert. Are they setting up Robert to be a Mountie?
I think so. I mean, they've been doing that for seasons now with Robert. Yeah. They've been kind of implying that. Yeah. I could see possibly later on, maybe when season 11, maybe Robert has like a storyline where he goes off to the academy or something, and Allie's a little bit torn up about it, and, you know, maybe Nathan has to, you know, talk her through that, or you know, something like that. I could see that.
Yeah, it would actually be a really great scene for Elizabeth and Allie if that happens, because she's able to kind of really recognize those feelings and be able to talk to her and bring her own experience. And Allie, of course, seeing Elizabeth, knowing Elizabeth lost her first husband because of that, and then now in a relationship with her, possibly in a relationship with her uncle, her dad. So, like, I feel like she would really hone into Elizabeth's advice if that was a storyline. That'd be a great storyline, though.
Yeah. Can we talk about Nathan and Bill's conversation on the way to talk to Montague? Both of them are not too happy that Capital City is a 22-hour train ride away. What? That's like in another country.
Yeah. That's a long way.
Because if you think about it, in Texas, if you drive 22 hours, you're still in Texas.
Oh my gosh. But I will say big props to Kevin in this scene, because you can see he is visually devastated, and you could see he's trying to keep it together when he's talking to Montague and the henchmen, but you could still see his face is like so devastated.
The henchmen.
Ugh. Like the fact that they added that in, the fact that that I'm repeating myself, but the fact that they added in that it's a 22-hour train ride away. So like,
yeah,
and I feel like it went over so many fans' heads because like a lot of fans kept bringing up the fact that, oh, even if he wins governor, he can still be in Hope Valley. If he's 22 hours away from the capital, that's going to be a big no.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the reasons why none of the governors have ever even went to Hope Valley, is because it's 22 hours away.
Exactly.
It's not in the core city. It's a small little ex-coal mining town. Okay, they know that it's not going to be this. They're not going to get a bunch of attention for going here, versus if they were to go to like Union City or Hamilton or other towns or other cities like that. I feel like it went over a lot of different fans' heads. Not talking about teams. I've seen it on both sides. Like they're not getting the gravity of it. Like this isn't just like a town over. This is 22 hours away. That's like literally going from one state.
That's a day. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no. It's no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's like what they were trying to bring with this scene. Like, it's devastating. Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably as far away as Hamilton would be from Hope Valley. Probably even further, but it's still very far.
Yeah.
They talk about how they were going to have Bill ride with Little Jack on that 22-hour train ride. Can you imagine Little Jack? Like, I get he's with his godfather. He's with Bill. He's in safe hands. But I would not be having my little 4-year-old on a 22-hour train ride without me.
No.
Like that
No.
No.
And trains did not go as fast as they do now. So it would just be excruciatingly long.
Right? And like he's 4. 4-year-olds don't do well with traveling, period, much less 22 hours.
Yeah.
Like I can imagine him like, if you imagine like it actually happened and like, they stayed together and they did that whole orchestration. Can you imagine like that he would have to sleep on the train, he'd have to eat like breakfast, lunch, and dinner on the train? Like that just sounds brutal to me, and I'm an adult. Like I couldn't imagine being 4 years old.
Yeah.
And like Theresa, like you said, like the devastation was like Kevin is so great about really honing into his skill of using like facial expressions, his eyes, like that whole thing, and it's not easy to do. I feel like that's something that is not like having no lines and having to pretty much act with your face is not easy to do. But he nailed it. Like he really nailed like what it would really be if the love of your life was moving 22 hours away. I could just imagine him thinking if it was Kayla, like it was Kayla moving 22 hours away from him. Like I can imagine actors like using like, because they hone in on your own personal like experience. Man, that's insane.
Another person that was not happy was Emily. That scene.
Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. I saw the card. That? I saw the card and I was like, no. And then Elizabeth pulls out the original card from season 1 and I was just like, oh my gosh. Okay.
The card.
I need a tissue now.
I was like, oh.
The card. We love you, Mrs. Thornton. You still bring sunshine to our lives. I was like,
oh, yeah. That was, yeah.
And
you
then
tell Lindsay did her homework.
Yes.
She did her homework, and I love that.
Elizabeth said,
it shows you she did her homework.
Nothing's been decided yet. There's a big election first, but I promise if I ever have to go away, I'll make sure you get a teacher who's even better than me. There's no one better than you.
Oh. And I do feel like that
sad.
I mean, like I don't feel like I don't feel like it completely turned everything around with her, but I do think it was just an added stack against her with how she was feeling.
Yeah. I don't think that was the turning point, which is interesting, because we have a conversation later that we're going to talk more about with Nathan and Elizabeth. And I do think that was the turning point. But it's interesting how this wasn't the turning point.
Yeah.
Because she loves teaching. It's her calling. Mm-hmm. She can't bear to leave Hope Valley. These children, this is the legacy she's been building for 10 years. And a visual representation of that wasn't even the thing that changed her mind, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Yep.
I mean, it shows her, like, she does truly, like, you could tell in just the emotions of her face and how she was, and how, like, all of it was like emotional for her. And it definitely, I think, struck her heart. But yeah, it wasn't the turning point. And what was the turning point is very interesting.
Yes. Yeah. And while we're on Nathan and Elizabeth, why don't we just talk about their two scenes before we go on? Mm-hmm. The first, at the fruit and veggie stand, I think is correct. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she's saying how proud she is of Lucas and how the most important thing is stopping the water diversion and saving Hope Valley. And Nathan says, yeah, that's all that matters. I've taken so much for granted raising little Jack here. The town, the people, the open fields and trees and fresh air. I see now how rare, how fragile it all is. How could we ever find another place like it? I don't think we can. I don't think we can.
Yes. It's very interesting that Elizabeth is almost already like mourning the loss of Hope Valley, even before Lucas has decided to run at this point. I think she knows what's coming and it's inevitable, and she's kind of preparing for it in her mind.
Yeah.
And the fact that she's sharing all of this with Nathan, saying things like, I don't think we could find another place like it. I don't think, this is everything to me, raising a little Jack here. She's very specific about how she feels about the town. But she also is already talking like she's, leaving already, when she doesn't know that she is, which is very interesting, I think.
And the turnip. I just have to mention the turnip that she's holding. Yep. That calls back to the very first episode.
Yes. I saw that immediately. She's at the fruit stand. She's got the gigantic turnip that Nathan was very firm, like obviously holding in the beginning of season 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I found was also interesting.
Yeah, call back to that too. Yeah.
Yeah. If nothing else, I did get a good chuckle out of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Especially because like Nathan was like throwing that up in the air and like looking at it with a big old smile and everything.
Yeah.
Like I still laugh so much at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think with this scene, the gears were really already starting to run in his head whenever she started talking about how she goes from, oh, I'm so proud of him, straight into, but the most important thing is about saving Hope Valley and getting the water like situation taken care of. And you could just tell he wasn't expecting her to go from saying, I'm proud of him, to going into that part of it. It was like, okay, what's going on? Like something's not right here. She's diverting or something. Like something was going, like he could just, it's like he didn't know what exactly was going on, but he could just tell like something was happening on the inside of her.
Yeah. You could tell he's definitely trying to get a read on what she's saying. Yeah. He agrees with all of it, but he's like, I don't really know what you're getting at here. But I think that was her kind of cueing him into the fact that, oh yeah, I might be leaving. And he's kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And the big scene in the schoolhouse. What about teaching? What about these kids? Is this what you want? Nathan, this is bigger than me. Elizabeth, you make a difference here. I'm asking you to be honest with yourself. Is this what you want? What other choice do I have? Elizabeth, what do you want? What I want is for him to win, so I'm leaving with him tomorrow night. Well, I hope it makes you happy. Be safe.
Anytime they say be safe, it's like a big a big deal. But one thing I noticed about this scene is that they don't actually say Lucas's name at all. It's just no.
I think Elizabeth says it once, maybe, and that's it.
I don't think she does. She just says
she doesn't.
She doesn't. She just says I want him to win, and she only says him. She doesn't say his name. So it's almost like they both know this is about the two of them, and they both don't want to go, and they don't want to be apart. Mm-hmm. But you know, it's very interesting because they're not bringing Lucas into this conversation in a way because they're not using his name. Like they've brought him up in other conversations before, and most of the time, actually all the time this season, Elizabeth has changed the subject like immediately.
Yeah.
But in this conversation, they are talking about him indirectly, but they don't actually say his name at all in this scene.
Yeah.
And like also like whenever he starts bringing this up, like she doesn't even use the fact, like, you know, she talks about how like this is bigger than me, and you know, there it's like I don't have any of the, like, there's what other choice do I have, you know, and all this kind of stuff like that, where it's like it's like she doesn't want to say something that's going to be negative towards the situation because she knows it's for the greater good, and she loves Lucas, and she knows this has to happen. But it's almost like you could tell she's very not happy with the situation.
Yeah.
But like it's like what she's saying, like what other choice does she have?
I mean, what her body language, what she's saying, she's basically saying that she feels trapped. That's basically what she's saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like what people who are trapped in a relationship that's without love, that has lack of love or whatever, would say, in my personal opinion. Like, take out what's actually happening, but the way that she's defending it is not really defending it. It's like trying to deflect it and trying to get them to look at something else within the situation and not directly look straight on ahead. Like, hey, you are feeling trapped in this situation you put yourself in. There's no other way, and there's only two ways out. Either you keep going down the path that you're going to, or you go down the path that your heart's been telling you to do since the beginning.
Yeah. What was very interesting to me about this scene, which my big takeaway from it was less about Nathan, but more visually how the more he questioned her, the more the fewer answers she had. And the more that it visually and mentally, you could tell that this scene was the scene where it basically exposed that her and Lucas's relationship has no like rudder. There's no rudder. It's just, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And it all just fell apart, basically. The whole like facade that she's been trying to tell herself, the whole thing that she has tried to convince herself of, it all fell apart in this scene, because the deeper he forced her to go with this conversation, the more she realized she didn't have any answers. And he's the first person that's actually got her to see that. Like, because even Rosemary has been like, oh, it's wedding jitters, you know, maybe it's doubts, but I don't really think so. It's wedding jitters. You know, Elizabeth, even herself to Henry, is like, I'm not thinking about it. I'm not going to discuss it. Like, Henry did like open that door a little bit for her, but she wasn't ready to discuss it. Even Lucas, she's not discussing any of this with. But with this scene, basically, he was like, no, you're gonna get to the bottom of this and tell me why this is okay. And she didn't have an answer. There was no answer.
No,
basically.
It's crumbling. Yeah, her facade is crumbling.
It all fell apart. Yeah.
And I think that's why she said what she said to Nathan, is because she knew saying what she said was going to make him back off. Because once again, Nathan has never pushed himself past that boundary. Once those two solidified and didn't want to be with him, and she was picking Lucas, he backed off. He put boundaries up. He did not go past those boundaries until this moment, and even then, I feel like he wasn't putting past that boundaries. I feel like he was doing exactly what Rosemary would have done if Rosemary saw and could tell what he was telling and what he was seeing. I feel like Rosemary would have said the same thing. but with this, it's like she can't say to Nathan what she would probably say to Rosemary, or that she'd probably have a lot more of an answer for Rosemary than she would Nathan, because Nathan is Nathan to her. They are two different people. They bring two different sides of Elizabeth out when it comes to this kind of situation.
Yeah. But also keep in mind that for her to actually say what she says later to Rosemary, it is so much safer for her to say it to Rosemary than it is to Nathan, even though Nathan probably already knows it. He already knows it, but she cannot say it to him because then it will be real. Then it'll be real. She would have to make a decision, and she would have to basically admit that her relationship with Lucas is just not working. It's crumbling. There's no foundation. There's no depth. There's no communication. And basically the reason why she is doing this is because she was running away from a future with Nathan. So it's all falling apart for her in this scene. And that's what stood out to me about this scene.
Yes.
Is just the fact that it's all falling apart.
Yeah. Like it's truly is like this being able to show the fans of it physically just crumbling.
Yeah.
Backtracking a little bit, the Canfields and their scene with Lucas, that was great.
It was really sweet. A little bit random random for me. I was kind of like, okay, but I liked it still. I thought it was great.
Yes, and it was sweet how Cooper gave the money to Lucas for his campaign.
Yes.
So cute. Yes. I love the Canfield so much. I think they brought so much goodness to the show. Like so much, like they really were like a missing puzzle piece to the show. And I think so too. I just can't wait to see more of them together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's funny because I haven't really been invested in them until this season. Yeah. This season was the one that really made me feel like they were really a family, that they just had this, they had something that they were giving to the community, all four of them, not just Joseph. And I loved that. And for the first time, I'm invested in them. I want more of them.
Me too.
And although I could say that about all the characters this year, I want more of everyone, which is really
it's
props like to Lindsay again, because for me to feel invested in all of the characters again is amazing.
Yeah,
it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like she just really did breathe new life into When Calls the Heart and really brought back a lot of things that we loved about When Calls the Heart from the beginning, which was the community, was all of these, was not just Jack and Elizabeth, it was also Abigail and Florence and Molly and Henry, and just all these dynamics of all of these different characters all living in this one small little tiny town. Like she brought that back, that feeling of community, that feeling of everyone having a part and everyone having like their own little puzzle piece, their own little thing that made this community work.
There were past seasons, especially the last few, where I didn't feel that connection to the characters. Like it just felt like a lot was going on and it was hard to keep track, and some of the characters just didn't even feel like themselves, and there's just a lot of things I wasn't invested in anymore.
Yeah.
And for a while there, I was only invested in Nathan's story and, maybe one or two other characters like Lee and Rosemary and, whoever. Few other people. But I am invested in every single character now.
Yeah.
Every single one, which is amazing.
Yeah. The scene with Lucas and Elizabeth at home, he is working on his speech and he needs advice. She says, "What I always tell my students is to write things that feel true. Lucas, to write from the heart." And this is kind of where I got annoyed just a little bit with Elizabeth, because she offers to go with him and wants to try to make it work. And Lucas says, "I'm really happy you'll be by my side." And then the facial expression when Lucas leaves is like, completely the opposite.
Yeah. You know what? It was very interesting in this scene because when they kissed, I somehow knew that was their goodbye kiss. Like from her end anyway. I don't know about him, but I knew when I saw her face, I was like, that was a kiss goodbye. That was it. That was it. But at the same time, yes, I was annoyed with Elizabeth because I thought what was going to happen was they were going to go together and have that conversation while they were doing this. And I'm just like, girl, what are you doing?
But then
don't
I
do
have
this.
to think about the fact that if we hadn't gotten that scene, would we have gotten the Elizabeth and Rosemary scene?
I think we still would have.
Yeah, we probably still would have. But
yeah,
I guess I'm just curious how things would have played out if we hadn't seen the Lucas and Elizabeth scene, if that makes sense.
That's true. Yeah, no, that does make sense.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, because that was kind of the segue into the whole conversation.
I do find it interesting that with her telling Lucas to write from his heart, basically to write from the heart and to like speak the truth, their truth, it kind of not only notes back to how Jack asks her about his speech and Nathan asks her about his speech, and she tells them two different, like tells them to look at her, focus on her. But with Lucas, it was she told him to write from the heart.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also a note to how he told her to write from the heart with her book.
Yes.
And then, of course, that segues Nathan telling her what's in your heart.
Yep.
Yeah. And also, it goes back to her journal entry at the beginning of the episode where she's like, I don't know what's in his heart, and I don't really know what's in mine, but yeah.
I'm interested to see, I'm interested. I wish we could have been able to see his speech. I wonder if we'll get a little bit of it whether it's his acceptance speech or.
I don't know. That would be cool to see.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see him give another speech.
Yes, me too.
Whether it's an acceptance speech or maybe he comes back to Hope Valley and kind of gives a speech to the town. Thanking them for who knows? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big scene with Elizabeth and Rosemary. I think this was my favorite scene in the episode.
Oh yeah, for sure.
This scene was heavy. So heavy. Woo! Really good, though.
Yes. People just kept asking me what I want. She doesn't know. She's torn. I'm trying. My heart just doesn't seem to want to follow. I just don't know how I feel about leaving or the wedding. I thought I made the right choice. It was secure and comfortable and safe. Safe. I was just so afraid of getting hurt again, but I don't think I was listening to my heart. And now it's become louder and louder, and I just don't know what it's trying to say. I think you do. And no matter what you decide, I will always be here for you. Always. I really like knowing you can see my Lionel.
Yes, did I almost start crying at that scene? Yes.
They're acting.
And there's so many notes in that because it's like, first of all, can we talk about the fact that she was looking at a scrapbook from her first year of school?
Yes.
And like the fact that, no doubt Jack's the one that took those photos with his camera.
Yes.
So emotional. And then, of course, she it's late at night. I love how she asks if it was Goldie and like if she was, needing help, and and it was actually Lee snoring.
Yeah. And she said Lee's snoring because he's stressed. I was like, oh, poor Lee.
Oh, poor Lee.
Yeah.
But and like the fact that she sees her light on, it just goes back to how it is. Like, it's another reminder to Elizabeth, like, why she loves living in Hope Valley, why she is where she is, why she didn't stay in Hamilton, like why she didn't want to go back to Hamilton. And, is
and why she wants to stay in the row house
little
too.
Life where, yes, exactly. And I mean, it's just a tie back to all those things. And then, of course, she starts talking and making points about everything that Team Nathan has said from the day one.
Yes.
Yes, finally. That's what we needed.
That was.
I was literally like gobsmacked.
I was shocked too.
It was not just paying attention to past seasons. She was paying attention to all of us.
Yes.
Like that, because that was the thing Team Nathan has been saying since day one.
Yes, exactly. And I like that Elizabeth finally admitted it, and it gives me hope that she will eventually admit that to Nathan as well.
I think she will.
Because I think he's the one who really needs to hear it, because all along, like way back in season 8, episode 2, he said, "Oh, I know you feel the same way that I do." And she said, "I can't." He knew all that time. He knew it. And I think she knew it too, but she was scared, and you could clearly see that she's scared in that scene. And even now she's still scared. So I think this is something she's going to have to talk to him about too. Not just Rosemary.
I think she will, and I think it's going to be at the log.
Yep. The place where they left off. Yeah.
It would be the best mirror parallel that Lindsay ever comes up with if it happens that way at the log.
I think it will.
I think one of the best parallels of the show, I would say.
I think there's a good possibility that
are we going to talk about the elephant in the room?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay.
Who wants to bring it up?
Okay, so Aaron talks about how there's going to be jaw-dropping moments.
This
was the most jaw-dropping moment ever.
Oh, yeah. Like, I was not expecting them to break up in this episode.
Is there going to be more jaw-dropping? Because...
Oh, yeah.
From what from what Aaron said, there's more than one jaw-dropping moment.
Yes. Okay, what could be more jaw-dropping than this?
I have a few ideas.
A kiss?
I have a few
ideas. Yes.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that's a good possibility with her big romance beats comment.
Oh, yeah, because we haven't gotten big romance beats at all.
And the fact that Kayla said that Fiona was going to open herself up to love at the end of this season, and we have yet to see that. It's going to be jam-packed.
Yeah,
I just hope it doesn't feel jam-packed.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that I love about going into this finale is it doesn't even have to be that everything gets tied up.
Yeah.
This is going to create an amazing segue into season 11, which of course we don't want to have to wait for because, we're on a roll here. But I really think the finale is going to create a fantastic segue into season 11, which I think is going to be great. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. I do feel like that is the reason why they renewed so quickly for season 11. And of course, the fact that they broke up Lucas and Elizabeth. That might have also been the reason.
That they renewed so quickly, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whew.
Let's just talk about that scene. Big scene. I'm not gonna lie, this made me tear up.
Yeah.
It was really, really sad.
Yeah. She says, "You were destined for this. Everyone sees it. You're bound for a bigger stage, and I think you know that in your heart." And then, Lucas suddenly realizes it's more than that. "I'm so sorry, Lucas. I can't bear the thought of hurting you. I really wanted to make this work. I did, but no matter how hard I tried to convince myself, your heart isn't there. I think that very deep down, I started to sense something was missing, and I just hoped so much that I was wrong. And I was afraid to bring it up. But maybe these paths were meant to be. I wish I could give you my heart, but I just can't. And you deserve to be with someone who can. We both do." And then the kiss on the forehead, I have to admit, that was really sweet.
That was so sweet.
It was sweet. And I will say, this was such a mature, healthy breakup, because for all the times that Lucas and Elizabeth's relationship was not healthy, in that they didn't communicate, or he just gave up way more than she did, or, you know, she just didn't appreciate the grand gestures or things like that. As much as their relationship has had a lot of unhealthy traits in it, this was a very healthy breakup. Very mature, very healthy, very amiable. They're going to be able to be friends after this. It's probably not going to take very long. At least, you know, like, obviously he should take time if he needs time. But I really don't think it's going to be anything that's going to destroy their relationship completely.
Yeah. He says, I wish you all the happiness in the world, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it just makes you want to cry.
And then it ends there.
Yeah. That it was tough. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't go to bed that night feeling elated. I was more like, I'm sad. This is sad. Doesn't matter what team you're on.
Yeah,
it was sad. It was sad.
It doesn't matter what team you're on. Mm-hmm. For me, I've always loved Lucas's character. So seeing this happen to him when he really did love Elizabeth so deeply, you could tell. Mm-hmm. It was just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But their words to one another really solidified that. I feel like they didn't communicate with one another because they knew what their hearts were already telling them, and they didn't want it to come out. Because once they come out in words, that's it.
You can't take it back.
Yeah. You can't take it back. Because she talked about wanting to talk to Lucas, and he mentioned how he wanted to talk to her, but neither one did it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of goes back to they already knew what it was that was going to happen once they did talk.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think that if Elizabeth hadn't like done this out of fear, and she wasn't like, let's just say if Nathan wasn't in the picture, if this was just about her and not leaving Hope Valley and them not being able to communicate, I think this is something they'd be able to work through and eventually like come out on the other side if they like learn to communicate from this moment. But this is way more than that. This is Elizabeth has been running from what she feels for Nathan the entire time. And I know some people weren't happy with that was the case, but in reality, that's what needed to happen for this to be firmly established that it was not going to work out with Lucas and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
It just
long
was
time
not
running.
Work out. That's why the episode is called Long Time Running, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
plus the song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I do feel bad for a lot of Team Lucas.
Yeah. I mean, we know how it feels. We all know how it feels.
I think that wraps up this jam-packed episode. So how about we talk about the preview for the finale? It is election time.
I think it looks like it's going to be another loaded episode. And I think it needs to be. We know there's been about a 3-week time jump.
Yes.
So that's interesting. Elizabeth, I noticed in this this teaser, it's very interesting because she looks very like at peace and not like frazzled like she has for the last few weeks. She looks very at peace, very like focused on the election and everything like that. I think it's interesting that Nathan is avoiding her, and I think it's because he feels like he's to blame for, maybe Elizabeth not going with Lucas, or even them breaking up. He might feel that way.
Yeah.
I think personally, my theory is that he's going to, apologize to her for overstepping, but then also I have a feeling he's going to realize that from that scene in the schoolhouse with her, he's going to realize from that scene that he still has feelings for her. Mm-hmm. And because of that, he's going to choose to distance himself from her. But I think ultimately that will put the ball in her court, and she will have to make the next move. I think that's how it's going to go down.
Yes. Yep. And
I agree. I do think that Nathan doesn't know. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like he's actually avoiding her. I think Bill and Nathan are focusing on the water situation, making sure that Montague and his crew don't try to do something or try to rush things as soon as they start the election. I think he's going to get tied up with that.
Yeah.
And it's going to seem like he's avoiding, but he's not.
Yeah.
And I
think that's a good point.
I think whenever he comes to vote, that's when he's going to realize that Elizabeth's here. She didn't go with Lucas, and maybe possibly see that she doesn't have her ring on.
Yeah, I'm curious if he's going to figure that out. I'm curious to
know if he's going to know. And I do agree, Theresa. I think that the schoolhouse scene really showed him what it was that Faith was talking about with what was blocking them. And I think he's going to be really thinking about a lot of that, and it is definitely in Elizabeth's court for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm curious to see what else is said in the office scene.
Yeah, I'm dying to see that scene.
I really hope it's not an interruption.
It probably will be.
It probably will be. I'm prepared for that, but I also don't think it will be. Yeah. I really do think they're going to say some pretty serious things in that scene and firmly establish that, contrary to certain opinions, I think that Nathan and Elizabeth didn't realize their feelings for each other until right at the end. And they haven't been just acting on feelings this whole time. I don't think either of them realized it until that moment. And then that's why he put distance between himself and her. And I think that's what that scene is going to establish.
I am glad that they're not giving a lot away in the previews.
Yeah.
And even the sneak peeks we've gotten haven't given too much away, which I'm glad for as well.
Yep. And then the sneak peek of Lucas and Elizabeth I thought was great too.
That's a good one. Yes. That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good scene.
Yes. So, question. What do you think, from what we've seen, is going to be the order of the scenes?
We talked about this on our live together from my account at Team Nathan Grant.
Yes.
And I think we're right. I think it's going to be, of course, them strolling through town, looking at all of Lucas's faces all over town.
The school scene.
The school scene.
The purple outfit.
And the purple outfit. We got some more photos of them in the saloon. Elizabeth messing with the radio. That's probably them trying to get things prepared to hear the live broadcasting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we actually had the election with everyone in the saloon.
Mm-hmm.
Then I feel like, well, I mean, of course, the scene between Nathan and Elizabeth will happen before that because they're voting. And then we get the election. And then we have the scenes of them out. And then, of course, the christening, the party after the christening.
Yeah.
And then I think it's going to be the log scene. I think the log scene is going to be the last scene of the season, personally.
Yeah.
Same.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and of course, there's a scene of them in the schoolhouse because Elizabeth is in her purple outfit then as well.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be the purple outfit is the first day. The green outfit is the second day. The pink outfit is the third day. The log outfit is the fourth.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say you have the voting and the election stuff.
Yeah.
Then you have the christening. During the christening reception, I think we're gonna have that conversation between Elizabeth and Henry.
Yeah.
Where he talks. I think he's gonna talk about Abigail and his regrets and relate that to her regrets with Nathan.
Yeah.
And then I think the final scene of the season is going to be the log scene.
Yep.
And you know what's crazy? And I've told other people this before, but I will say it again here. I always pictured, even back in season 8, I was picturing what it would look like for Elizabeth and Nathan to get together. And I always pictured it in the woods somewhere. It looked exactly in my mind what it looks like in the log scene. So if that comes true, I don't know. Me and Lindsay must be on the same wavelength or something. I don't know. But if that's the way it happens, I'm going to go crazy because that is everything I visualized.
Oh,
literally. So yeah.
That wouldn't be the first prediction that we've gotten right this season. I mean, you and I have already called at least 2 things.
Yeah.
This season.
I mean, yeah.
It's going to be so heartbreaking to hear Henry bring up Abigail.
And here's the thing. I also have a theory that I don't know if Henry will be back in season 11. I'm pretty sure he will.
I hope so.
But if he isn't, I could see him ending the season, leaving Hope Valley to go find Abigail.
Yeah.
I could see that. And I would just cry. I'd cry so much. It would be amazing. I would
cry.
Yeah.
I think going back to episode 11, I would rate it 9 out of 10. What about y'all?
9.5 out of 10.
I'd give it a 9.5.
Yeah.
I would say the emotional impact was definitely there. And you know me, I love the emotional episodes.
Same.
Yeah. Same.
9.5 out of 10 for sure.
It was a great episode.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you, Morgan, for joining. This is always fun having you on.
It's always fun to be on.
Of course. And we will definitely have you back again sometime.
I can't wait.
All right, Hearties. I think that wraps up our review of When Calls the Heart, Season 10, Episode 11. If you enjoyed this episode and want to share your thoughts and predictions for the finale, you can like this video and leave them in the comments of this episode. If you want to stay up to date on all of my episodes, you can subscribe to this channel. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you have a great day or night wherever you are in the world. And Theresa and I will see you next week for the Season 10 finale. We love y'all. Bye.